It was a distressing day in Town City. Skallow, Joe, Robo, Major, Nick and Thomson were all very concerned after the bodyguard was arrested and locked in jail, following accusations of him committing or being in association with a string of serious crimes, all which took place in the Oakway area. These crimes have been reported in the region area Rag, the state's largest newspaper, as well as in local papers like the Town City Times, the Oakway Gazette, among many others. It was also reported on the evening news, with Town City's premier news anchor John Ernest detailing each offence as they happen, from least severe to most severe. The individual or one of the individuals identified as being involved in these crimes hadn't been recognised by name but by appearance. A male Caucasian tall, of a large muscular build, and had very striking sky blue eyes with hints of a large bushy beard. The bodyguard was being held at the Town City Central Police Station, the largest and most highly secure station in all Town City, overseen by Captain Bull, the same Captain Bull who worked with them on the case of the theft of Rufus the Runt's treasure, and was promoted like their friend Sergeant Bobby after the treasure was saved. They were concerned because they knew the bodyguard was innocent, yet everyone else, including Sergeant Bobby, were not convinced of this supposed fact. The five continually visited Sergeant Bobby at the Oakway police station, who had transferred there after he and the six worked together on the Rufus case to see what he could do about helping the bodyguard. "You must be able to do something," argued Major Nick. "You've known us and the bodyguard long enough to know that he would never do nor would never be a part of anything like this." "Based on the evidence we have so far, he is the most likely suspect," refuted Sergeant Bobby. "I've been doing the best I can, looking for all the legal documents and books I can get my hands on. You must give me time." "Time? We don't have time. They're already setting up the trial. There must be something you can do now," added Skallow. "All I can do now is go to where the bodyguard is being held and meet with my former superior and discuss this case and assume trial." "Is that satisfactory?" asked Sergeant Bobby. Skallow, Joe, Major Nick and Thomson talked between themselves for a good 5 minutes, then accepted and requested to join him, a request Sergeant Bobby was willing to meet. Sergeant Bobby and the four arrived at the Town City Central Police Station, and at once proceeded to Captain Bull's office, where Bobby and Bull debated the issue, while the others sat and listened. "Captain Bull," began Sergeant Bobby, "me and these four you might remember from their involvement in the case of Rufus the Runt's treasure, are inquiring about one of your prisoners here, Boris McLean, known as the Bodyguard." Captain Bull angled himself to look at the four seated behind Sergeant Bobby. Then he spoke. "We do have a man of that name here, and yes, I do remember these four and the one called the Bodyguard. And yes, I do remember them appearing to be law-abiding, respectful citizens, but I don't know them well enough to say the accused is innocent. You never know what people are capable of. Plus, all the evidence that has been acquired so far points to him as guilty, as you must know, Sergeant Bobby." After which Major Nick immediately stood up and said, "Captain Bull, could I say something?" "You may," he replied. "What if we prove he is innocent?" Major Nick questioned. "If you can provide sufficient evidence proving his innocence and confirming who is responsible, bringing them here to me, then Boris will be released immediately," replied Captain Bull. "Thank you, Captain Bull," answered Major Nick. "Would me and my friends be able to see him?" "Perfectly fine," replied Captain Bull. "You know the way, Sergeant Bobby. Would you lead them there, please?" "Yes, sir," answered Sergeant Bobby as he opened the door for the others. Skallow, Joe, Major Nick and Thomson exited Bull's office, and Bobby went too. However, outside, Sergeant Bobby asked him to wait as he wanted to discuss something with Captain Bull first. He returned through the door to the surprise of Captain Bull. "Anything wrong, Sergeant?" he asked. "No," replied Sergeant Bobby. "I just wanted to say it's good to see you and ask how you're doing since I transferred to Oakway Station." "I've been doing fine, considering the stressful and sometimes difficult parts of my position and job," responded Captain Bull. "And yes, it's good to see you two again, Sergeant Bobby, but I have known you long enough and well enough to decipher that you haven't just come to exchange pleasantries. You want to discuss this case, don't you?" inquired Captain Bull. "Yeah, you got me. That's why you were promoted directly to detective after graduating from police academy while I was only a constable," laughed Sergeant Bobby. "You're right about that," added Captain Bull. "Anyway, let's discuss this case. You have to understand, like I said before, all the evidence that has been acquired so far points to him as guilty. I respect your desire to help these people. That's what any good police officer and more importantly friend would do. However, at this point no one can do anything until, like I informed Nick before, provide sufficient evidence proving his innocence and confirming who is responsible, bringing it here to me. Then Boris will be released immediately. Go with them, visit your friend, see what you can find out. He might talk to you more than us, informed Captain Bull. Thank you, Bull. We'll do that, replied Sergeant Bobby as he turned to leave. While he was leaving out the door, Captain Bull said to him, I'm sorry, Liam, I couldn't be more help. That's all right, Arthur. You did your best, returned Sergeant Bobby before shutting the door. Not good, Major Nick asked Sergeant Bobby the moment he shut Bull's office door. Unfortunately, sighed Sergeant Bobby in response. Nothing that hasn't already been said. The only advice he gave was to go talk with the bodyguard and hear his side of the story. Following this, all went to visit the bodyguard with Sergeant Bobby leading the way. The bodyguard was reclining on his bunk, resting when they arrived. Sergeant Bobby knocked gently on the door window with the back of his index finger. Hearing it, the bodyguard opened his right eye and turned his head ever so slightly in that direction. Seeing his friend standing there, immediately got up and went to greet them. Morning, Boris. Are you okay, younger brother? Asked Major Nick. How have you been? Added Thomson. Hey, fellas. It's not that bad here. Not great, but fine. Glad I'm being overseen by Bull, someone I know and knows me. I would like to get out of here, though. Found any way to make that happen yet? Not yet, informed Skallow regrettably. But we're trying the best we can, joined Joe. The only thing we can do is to hear your side of the story again, hopefully find some leads from it, briefed Sergeant Bobby. The bodyguard began. As you all know, I was at home and in bed for the past few weeks with the flu. Luckily, during the whole time these crimes took place. During that time, the only people I saw was Skallow, Joe, Robo, Major Nick Thomson, Dr. Jason Eckert, and my parents. A couple of days after I had finally recovered from my sickness, I was relaxing with my brothers, Nick and Thomson, in our living room, and our friends Skallow, Joe, and Robo were there as well. When out of nowhere the front door burst open and multiple officers from this station entered, all carrying firearms except for the sergeant, a ruthless woman named Athene Blade. She approached us and asked for me, saying, "Which one is Boris McLean?" I stood up, but before she could order my arrest, Major Nick intervened and asked, "What has he been accused of? Let me see the warrant and charges." Sergeant Blade handed Nick the warrant and disclosed the charges. As you all know, they were all theft, all serious, all committed at different businesses throughout the Oakway area, 4 to be exact. The first, the Gold Oak convenience store, the one with the very striking green dumpster round its back. The second, the Water's Edge Tavern near Shore Cove. The third, Hellness Pharmacy in Oakway Shopping Square. And finally the fourth, Trinket Gemstone Jewellery Store at the Oakway Arcade. Following this, and after Nick confirmed the warrant was official, I was arrested and transported to this station, and after going through the normal procedures was brought here to this cell where I've stayed since. After the bodyguard finished his story, Sergeant Bobby said, "Interesting. I have an idea. The 4 of you, Skallow, Joe, Major Nick and Thomson, each go to one of the locations that was hit and find out what you can. Question the staff, customers and other witnesses. Search around for clues also to help prove the bodyguard's innocence." Everyone looked at each other in agreement. However, Major Nick had a query. "What will your part be? Will you be joining us?" he asked Sergeant Bobby. "No, I won't be joining you," Sergeant Bobby answered. "This isn't my case officially. I'm only involving myself in it because you are my friends. So before we proceed any further, we will have to discuss this with Captain Bull first. We will also need to inquire if he would be willing to deputize you all temporarily to make all this proper and legal. In saying this, I have cases and business to attend to back at Oakway Station anyway. Nevertheless, if you need anything, don't hesitate to come see me," he concluded to Skallow, Joe, Major Nick and Thomson. Prior to the 5 leaving, the bodyguard said, "It was nice to see you. Don't worry, everything will be all right." "You bet it will be," replied Thomson, and everyone said their goodbyes and left. Before going their separate ways, the 5 returned to Captain Bull, who, after hearing Sergeant Bobby's suggestion, agreed and deputized Skallow, Joe, Major Nick and Thomson as temporary officers of the law. The following day, Skallow, Joe, Major Nick and Thomson discussed and decided who would survey each location. They settled on Skallow and Robo to inspect the Gold Oak, Major Nick the Water's Edge Tavern near Shore Cove, Joe Hull-Nis Pharmacy in Oakway Shopping Square, and Thomson the Trinket Gemstone Jewellery Store at the Oakway Arcade. That evening they regrouped at the McLean's place, where each reported what they discovered at their location. Skallow reported, "Nothing new at the Gold Oak." Robo and I searched the perimeter and the building's exterior itself, finding nothing. We searched round the interior, finding nothing. We finally asked customers, the cashier and manager, learning nothing not already said. All this understandable, as this was the first location hit. Major Nick reported next. Like the Gold Oak, there was nothing new at the Water's Edge Tavern. The exterior and interior were clean, nothing to uncover there. I had a nice chat with the owners, Mr. and Mrs. Murphy. Nothing that hasn't been heard already was said. The only slightly new thing was that they showed me some photos of the cash register and safe that were burgled. However, the police had already acquired the original items for evidence, so nothing noteworthy. The third to report was Joe. Hull-Nis Pharmacy. The glass in the door is still covered with wood. However, the store itself looked like a crime had never happened. Each employee I spoke to repeated everything already said in Ernest's report. Disappointingly, like the two others, Hull-Nis Pharmacy had nothing new to offer. Thomson was the last to report, and everyone expected him to echo their findings. However, this wasn't the case. He began, "I visited the Trinket Gemstone Jewellery Store at the Oakway Arcade. Unlike the other locations, the store was full of police tape covering the cases hit and the entrance was protected by 2 security guards. On seeing all this, I wondered if there would be something to prove the bodyguard's innocence. Although after entering the establishment and looking around, and after speaking to the employees present, found nothing new, nothing to help Boris. While I was leaving, I turned to the right and saw in the distance something black under a trash can. I went to investigate, and the mysterious black thing was a glove. As I picked up the glove, and it seemed heavier than it should be, I felt around to see why this was, and found something hard in the glove's index finger hole. I then turned the glove upside down and shook it gently to try and get whatever it was out. What appeared in my hand was an unusual looking ring, after which I placed it and the glove in my pocket and continued on my way." After Thomson finished his report, he went up to his room and returned to the others with the glove and ring, showing them what he had found. The glove was black, made of leather fleece, and was of the left hand. The ring was made of crimson titanium and had a circumference of 80 millimeters and a width of 20 millimeters. It also had a ruby trim wrapped around both the top and bottom, which appeared to be fake. The trim began 2 millimeters below the edge of the ring, and the trim itself was 3 millimeters wide. Searching round the ring, they found a crab shape made of the same fake ruby as the trim. This crab was large, about 10 millimeters long, and reaching to the trims but not quite touching them, with 1 millimeter separating them on both the top and bottom. Beside the crab on either side was the letter C, about 3/4 of the size of the crab. These letter C's were placed 2 millimeters above and below the start and end of the crab, and from the sides of the crab directly in the center, between the beginning and end of the trim and the beginning and end of the letter C's, was placed a small dot about 1/2 millimeter in diameter. Skallow, Joe, Major Nick and Thomson each took turns studying the ring as well as the glove, finding nothing concrete. "Any ideas?" asked Thomson. "No," replied Joe. "No, I don't recognize that symbol," joined Skallow. "It looks like whoever owns it belongs to a club or gang of some kind," answered Major Nick. "Other than that, I don't know. We must be able to find something from these. It's the only lead we have," Thomson followed. "Why don't we bring both to Sergeant Bobby and see what he thinks? He might know what this symbol means," suggested Joe. "It's worth a try," agreed Thomson. "Don't you think we should show this to Captain Bull first? It is his case. Bobby's only involved in a personal way, not professional," argued Major Nick. "I don't see what harm it would do to have Bobby investigate it first," returned Skallow. "I would like to hear what he thinks. Like Joe says, he might know what this symbol means. Sergeant Bobby is an honest and professional man. He will make sure this evidence gets to Captain Bull. Plus, I'm not fond of that Sergeant Blade. There's something about her I don't like," he concluded. Major Nick thought on Skallow's words as well as the others, and agreed, saying, "You're right, I too would like to discuss this with Sergeant Bobby in private before showing it to Bull. I also agree with your point about Sergeant Blade. There's something about her I don't like either. Especially the way she treated the bodyguard during his arrest, treating him as guilty even though that hasn't been proved." After finishing their report, they placed both the ring and glove into separate Ziploc bags, ready to present to Sergeant Bobby the next day. Early the next morning, Skallow, Joe, Robo, Major Nick and Thomson hurried to the Oakway police station to show Sergeant Bobby this unexpected but vital development in the case. They knocked on his office door and he invited them in. "Come in," Sergeant Bobby called. Seeing who it was, put down his pen, stood up and said, "Morning, fellas. I have nothing new to report about the bodyguard, but anyway, how's your investigation been going? Found anything new and interesting?" Major Nick answered, "Morning, Bobby. Things have been going quite well. Each of us investigated one place each. Unfortunately, we didn't discover anything new at the Gold Oak, Water's Edge, or Hullness Pharmacy. However, near the Trinket Gemstone Jewellery Store and the Oakway Arcade, Thomson found these," with Thomson placing the 2 bags of evidence on Sergeant Bobby's desk. A black leather fleece glove of the left hand and a mysterious ring, included Major Nick. Sergeant Bobby studied the 2 pieces of evidence presented to him, holding them to the light and examining them with his magnifying glass. "Interesting. Remarkably interesting. Where exactly did you find this?" inquired Sergeant Bobby. Thomson stepped forward. "I found the glove with ring in it slightly underneath the trash can located just past the clothing store next door to the Trinket Gemstone Jewellery Store," explained Thomson. "Actually, I took a picture that I completely forgot about," he continued, taking out his phone and showing the picture to Bobby. Sergeant Bobby asked Thomson to send him the picture, which he printed out immediately, and slipped it into an evidence bag. He placed the picture, glove and ring into a larger bag, and to the 4 said, "Sorry guys, I can't help you here. I believe I've seen this symbol somewhere before, but can't remember where or what it belongs to. What we can do is bring this new evidence to Captain Bull and see what their forensic department can discover." Skallow, Joe, Major Nick Thomson and Sergeant Bobby returned to the town city central police station. They knocked on Captain Bull's office door and he called, "Enter." They came into his office, and before Bull could lift his head, Sergeant Bobby said, "Afternoon, Captain Bull." Surprised, Captain Bull raised his head and replied, "Did not expect to see you here so soon. Found anything to help your friend since our last encounter?" "Actually, we have," responded Sergeant Bobby confidently as he placed the package on Bull's desk. Astonished, Captain Bull cried, "What's this? Where did you find it?" Sergeant Bobby continued, "Thomson stumbled upon this under a bin near the Trinket Gemstone Jewellery Store in the Oakway Arcade. We were wondering if you could organise for the forensic team to analyse this new evidence and finally clear Boris of these charges." Following Sergeant Bobby's request, Captain Bull called for Sergeant Blade on his office phone. When she arrived, Bull asked her to take this new evidence to the forensic team and to have them report back to him as soon as they have finished. Sergeant Blade nodded her head once and took the bag, then left, shutting the door behind her, saying nothing to Bull nor Bobby or the 4. A good hour later, Captain Bull received a message on his computer, alerting all with an audible ding. He opened the email and read aloud what the forensic team had discovered. "Dear Captain Arthur Bull, this email is to inform you of our findings that we uncovered from the 2 items, the left-handed glove and the unusual ring you brought to us. What we discovered through our testing is that these 2 items belong to a man named Marcus Allen, who more commonly goes by the name Mammoth Marcus. We also discovered from further research that the ring in question is connected to their clique, the Crimson Crabs, with it being their way of identifying each other. Unfortunately, we can't connect Mr. Allen to any precise location, as his profile does not state any address. However, we do have the address of his mother, a widow named Mrs. Margaret Allen, who lives at 381 Creek Road, based on our records. We will report to you any further information regarding this inquiry if any developments are made. Yours sincerely, Dr. Colin Amarin, lead forensic scientist at TCCPS. Not even a minute later, Captain Ball received another message, this time from the court. the Town City High Court a message confirming the date for the bodyguard to face trial.